Hi, it's Story Channel Mitch with some more Lady Precious stream. That 20's getting crumpled. Okay, so we are now on Act 3. We are coming to a strange land known as the Western Regions. It is believed that the customs here are exactly opposite to those in China. For instance, the women here wear long gowns, whilst the men wear short coats and have their trousers showing. Their appearance, too, is unusual. All male and female have red hair, green eyes, prominent noses, and hairy hands. To most people, these things seem to be quite unbelievable, and the idea of the existence of such a country with such inhabitants seem to be as absurd as believing there is a race which laughs when sad and weeps when happy, or walks with hands and works with feet. Yet the books of wise men tell us that the country of the Western regions does not exist, and now we come to have an actual experience of it. The stage represents the magnificent court of His Majesty, the King of the Western Regions. Sorry, my son's bugging me. Supposed to be in bed. The stage represents the magnificent court of His Majesty, the King of the Western Regions. Probably they have very queer furniture and very strange decorations. Indeed, he would be quite at a loss to prepare the properties of a scene, had we not had the advantage of being able to leave the audience to furnish them according to their own imagination. Everything in this scene is strange, but most strange thing of all is that His Majesty the King is no other than our old friend, Hsiung, he whom we believe the enemy had killed long ago, is still alive, and after his conquest of the rest of the regions, has proclaimed himself their king. To our regret, no records of his conquest are recorded, and we regret even more having arrived just a day too late to see his coronation. However, another great occasion is coming very soon. It has been arranged that a royal wedding is to take place tomorrow. The Queen-elect is a foreign princess with whom our hero shares the laurels of his victories. There is a general armor to the effect that there is reluctance on his part to the marriage, and the people wonder why such a beautiful maiden should not be snapped out with alacrity. But we know the cause is not true to His excellent lady, whom we are going to meet soon, but to His Majesty, who has some dark secret which he dares not reveal. That is why we find the first gentleman of his kingdom is rather depressed in his hour of what should be great happiness. Following a big procession of attendants and courtiers, His Majesty appears in a magnificent robe and beautifully decorated crown, and with a particular scepter in his right hand. Our first impression of him makes us think that there must be some mistake when we say that he is no other than our old friend Hsiung. As our old friends say, we clearly remember used to be a clean-shaven young man. His Majesty has a thick black beard over a foot long. To a casual eye, there isn't even the slightest resemblance between the two, but on closer inspection one can easily perceive by his noble bearing and distinguished features that he is no other than Hsiung. 18 years have passed since we last saw him. Time has no doubt left its traces. Besides, clothes do much. He wore a junior officer's uniform then, but now he is arrayed with handsome robe that would make even a beggar look regal. He seems to know that among the audience many are doubtful of his identity, so he introduces himself to them once more. Sage says, "By the help of the royal princess, I am now the honor to be your humble servant, Hsiung, the King of the Western Regions." He is helped to sit down on a chair behind the table, and he continues talking. "I have been away from my home for 18 years. There are two things I desire perpetually: to return to my wife Precious Stream, and to avenge myself on Wei, the tiger general, who attempted to have me murdered and nearly caused my death. When I returned victorious after the others had been defeated, General Wei pretended to celebrate my triumph by giving a banquet in his camp, and having made me quite intoxicated with strong wine, he tied me onto a horse and set it galloping towards the enemy. Luckily, I was rescued by the princess who released me and helped me to conquer all the western regions, from which she revolted for love of me. She wished to marry me, an unusual proposal which I could not possibly refuse. Postponing it again and again, I have at least been obliged to promise to marry her after my coronation. Whilst everyone else in this kingdom seems to be rejoicing at the prospect of the coming wedding, I alone am troubled by it. I have been vainly trying to explain to her that I am already married, but I can't bear to break her heart. What shall I do? What shall I do? An old Taoist priest appears. The priest says, "Say Ping Kuei is unfaithful. Say Ping Kuei is unfaithful." First attendant says, kneeling before Say, I beg to report to your majesty that a wild goose is flying over the palace, uttering strange sounds. Say says, getting down from his seat, "Show me where it is." The priest says, "Say Ping Kuei is unfaithful. Say Ping Kuei is unfaithful." The first attendant, pointing to the priest, says, "There is the bird, your majesty." Say says to himself, "This is strange. It seems to keep on uttering that I am unfaithful. This is indeed a bad omen." The attendants, he says, "Attendants, bring me my bow and arrows." The attendants say, "Yes, your majesty." The first attendant presents him with a bow only. Say to himself again, "I have never before heard a wild goose uttering sounds that seem to be like the words of a human being." He appears to shoot an arrow from his bow. "With my bow and arrow I shoot it." He shoots it. There! The priest retires, leaving the letter on the ground. The first attendant says, picking up and kneeling before Say, "I beg you to report to your majesty that I found this piece of cloth on that bird." Say says, "Hand it to me." The first attendant says, handing it, "Yes, your majesty." Say is reading it. Precious Dame presents her respects to her unfaithful when he starts weeping. "Oh, my dear wife, I can't stop the tears flowing from my eyes." To all he says, "Courtiers, attendants, retire for a short time, please." They all retire. The words on the cloth torn from her skirt are written with her blood. He reads it again. Every line, every word written in blood. It says, "Precious Dame presents her respects to her unfaithful husband, Say Ping Kuei, and bids to tell him that since his departure, she has been suffering every hardship in the humble cave. If she returns immediately, they may meet each other once more, but if he delays for only a few days more, they may never see each other again." He looks towards the east. "Far, far away, there is my home, my sweet home. Oh, my dear, dear, Precious Dame, my dear, dear wife. I must get back in time to see you. Let me ponder and think of some plan." He taps his forehead with his fingers. I must do it. I must do it. At any cost." The attendants reappear. "Attendants!" Attendants say, "Yes, your majesty." Say says, "Request your highness the royal princess to come to court." The attendants say, "Yes, your majesty." The first attendant goes on to the right entrance and calls loudly, "His majesty requests the presence of her highness the royal princess." A voice off stage says, "To hear is to obey." In spite of her queer military attire, Her Highness is the royal princess of the western regions, is a very charming woman. She is so unspeakably attractive and so enchanting that words fail to describe her charms. The uniform she wears is a combination of military pattern and fashion plate. There are 4 small, beautifully embroidered flags fastened to her back, and 2 long pheasant feathers stick out of her helmet. A white fox fur encircles her neck. Preceded by 4 maids, she walks quickly forward. Her gait is quite different from that of any of those ladies and that we have seen before. And there's a nice picture. There you go. The princess says to the audience, "Your humble maid, the royal princess of the western regions, at your service. I have just returned from the parade ground after reviewing my troops, and have been told that His Majesty has commanded me to go to court." To her maids, "My friends, lead the raid to the court." They proceed and arrive. Your humble maid, the royal princess of the western regions, offers her respects to your majesty. Say says, don't stand on ceremony. The princess says, thank you. Say says, you are at liberty to sit down. The princess says, thank you. May I know what important affair of state your majesty wishes to discuss with me? Say cunningly says, no, there is no affair of state I wish to trouble you with. As you have been having a very hard time recently and reviewing all these troops, I have prepared a banquet in your honor, and I would be glad if you could consent to have a hearty carousel with me. Princess, highly pleased, says, this would indeed be a great honor. Allow me to serve your majesty with wine. To her, my maids, she says, my maids! Maids say, yes, your highness. Princess says, prepare wine for me. The maids say, yes, your highness. Say says, oh no, I couldn't possibly trouble you, attendants. Oh, sorry. Say says, oh no, I couldn't possibly trouble you. Attendants! The attendants say, yes, your majesty. Say says, prepare wine for me. The attendants say, yes, your majesty. Say says to the princess, let me leave the pleasure of serving you. The first attendant presents him with a jug and two cups on a tray, and he serves the princess, who drinks. Although I am very happy here and drinking with you, the thought of our being attacked by the neighboring states constantly troubles me. The princess says, finding the subject one she likes most, I beg your majesty not to worry about the invasion of other states, for I myself am able to cope with any invasion regardless of numbers of the enemy. Say says, regardless of the number. Princess says, yes, but of course we entirely depend upon your blessing, without which there is no chance of victory. Say says, flattering, oh no, you are invisible, princess. Princess says, thank you, your majesty's health. She finds that her cup is empty. My maids! Maids, yes, your highness? Princess says, more wine. Maid says, serving, yes, your highness. Princess says, to your majesty, and then she drinks. Say says, how full of life and charm you are. Do not hesitate to refresh yourself thoroughly. You have a hard time reviewing the troops, and a good bumper of wine will greatly benefit you. Princess says, pleased. Oh, thanks, your majesty, but I can't drink as much as I could formerly. Say says, how much could you drink formerly? Princess says, 100 cups at least. Say says, and now? The princess says, smiling, only 50 cups, multiplied by 2. Say laughs, ha ha, just the same, 100 cups. To the attendants, he says, attendants! Attendants say, yes, your majesty. Say says, serve the wine in large cups. The attendants doing so say, yes, your majesty. Say urges the princess to drink incessantly, which she does, becoming intoxicated. She leans her head on the table. The maids say, her highness is intoxicated. Say's pleased, he says, she is. And to himself, he says, she has fallen into my trap. I know, that's a bad laugh. To the attendants, he says, attendants! Attendants say, yes, your majesty. Say says, help me to change my clothes. The attendants say, yes, your majesty. They all screen him, and he changes into the attire of a junior military officer. Say says, now I have done it. He takes a little yellow flag from the princess. With his yellow flag, I can go where I like and get away from the western regions, but I shall have to leave without bidding her goodbye. The first attendant says, your majesty, what shall we say to her highness when she asks about you after you have gone? Say says, sitting down at the table, I will write a letter to her. I can't bear to say goodbye to her. Reading as he writes, the new year is approaching, and I am going to the frontier to review the troops there. If you still love me, follow me with all your troops to the third pass. If you don't love me, stay where you are and don't think of me. To attendants he says, "Men of the western regions, saddle my horse for me. Tell Her Highness the Royal Princess when she wakes up that I have gone to the frontier to review the troops there." The first attendant says, "Yes, Your Majesty." He presents Say with a whip. Say mounts his steed and disappears. The maids say, "Your Highness, Your Highness." Princess waking up, "The wine has affected me a little." Looking around, she says, "Where is His Majesty?" The first attendant says, "His Majesty has gone to the frontier to review the troops there, Your Highness." The princess says, astonished, "Did he leave any orders for me?" The first attendant presenting the letter to her, "His Majesty has left the letter for Your Highness." The princess says, taking the letter, "Let me read it." She reads, "The new year is approaching, and I am going to the frontier to review the troops there. If you still love me, follow me with all your troops to the third pass. If you don't love me, stay where you are and don't think of me." To herself, she says, "What does he mean? What does he mean?" She slaps her forehead with her fingers while pacing the stage. "Ah, I see. His Majesty has gone back to China. He wants me to follow him with all the troops to China," she calls. "Attendants!" The attendants, "Yes, say, yes, Your Highness." "Princess, order my 2 aides-de-camp Ma Ta and Kang Hai to await my further orders before the palace gates with all my troops." The attendants say, "Yes, Your Highness." The first attendant calls aloud, "Her Highness the Royal Princess orders her 2 aides-de-camp Ma Ta and Kang Hai to await her further orders before the palace gates with all her troops." Voices off stage, "To hear is to obey." The princess says to herself, "How unreasonable His Majesty is. He ought not have gone away without bidding me goodbye. I will overtake him with my troops and ask him what is the reason." She retires with the attendants and the maids. Then 4 soldiers, 4 officers, and the 2 aides-de-camp appear with military equipment. These 2 aides are arrayed in ridiculous attire and with funnily painted faces. Okay. So I'll stop here for this part. Alright, thank you very much for listening. Can I have that feel back? Thank you. And I'll continue the next time. Alright.
How many episodes are you doing?
Okay. Ciao.